Hey, what's going on, good people? It's Gardner Douglas, your Oyster Ninja. I'm here with a legend in the making, the one and only Imani Black. What's up, Imani?
Hi, Gardner. How are you?
What's so funny? I was just speaking the truth.
No, I think I'm still trying to receive all like the good comments of legend in the making, trailblazer, all those things. So anytime I hear it, I just like, do a little chuckle and just like keep nodding my head like, okay, yeah, one of these days I'll believe it. But right now I'm still in my like fledgling stages of it.
I like Trailblazer. Trailblazer sounds good too.
Uh, well, with that, I realize, with Trailblazer and Legend, like there's needs to be some action behind it. So every time I hear it, I'm like, oh, okay, well, there you go. Like I got work to do. I gotta keep that title.
And for the folks who haven't heard of you, Imani, um, I'm just gonna say that you created the nonprofit, right?
Mhm.
Nonprofit. We got minorities and aquaculture. Is that the whole word? Or is it a longer?
Nope, that's it. Minorities and Aquaculture. Yep.
Easy, simple. It says it all. Um, but just tell me a little bit, first of all, why you created minorities and aquaculture, and how has it changed your life? And yeah, let's just start there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I created Minorities and Aquaculture back in technically in June of 2020. And I really had the idea kind of started starting in my head back in January of 2020. And so that was like kind of in the midst of, the Black Lives Matter and police brutality and everything that was going on in our country. And of course, as a person of color, I was, indirectly affected by everything that was going on. And so I just started, and diversity and inclusion, it's been buzzwords for a while, but especially last year, they were huge things. And, there were things that people were kind of calling forward in a lot of situations. And so I just started like looking in my own space and really asking myself, like, well, is like is the places that influence me daily, are they promoting diversity and inclusion? And so yeah, I just kind of realized that there was a lack of diversity in aquaculture. And I've been an oyster farmer for about 5 years, and I had never worked with another, person of color, male or female, that was like in a leadership role. And so I just started asking people around me, like, when is the last time you saw a person of color, like as a hatchery manager or as an assistant manager or anything like that? And nobody could give me an answer. And I was asking people from all different ranges of experience. And it wasn't until one of my mentors, who's got 35 plus years of experience in aquaculture, when I asked him, and he couldn't give me an answer, I realized that this was something that I needed, that was like a lot bigger than me. And then what really gave me kind of the push to do it was thankfully a lot of like oyster organizations were, putting out statements of the Black Lives Matter and police brutality, and just kind of trying to bring the aquaculture community together. And there was one part of those statements of, we're going to have conferences and forums and discussions about how to make aquaculture more diverse. And the first time that I read that, I was like, wow, well, how are people that don't look like the target audience going to, be able to, reach these people that or need to be in aquaculture? And so I just was like, well, okay, here's all the information. And you kind of have to, take it with like the vision of kind of what you want for your life. And I just was like, I wanted to create a space for people of color, specifically Black women that wanted to get into aquaculture, that would give them a step into the door with opportunities, but also would provide them with a longevity of resources, not just kind of because diversity and inclusion were buzzwords, but because the lack of diversity in aquaculture is just more than just trying to get more people in aquaculture. It's the focal point of our sustainable seafood, and it affects everybody. So everybody should kind of have the space to be exposed and educated about it and be able to impact it in their own way. So yeah, long story short, I just launched in October of 2020. So it's been about 5 months now. And it's like really changed changed my life. Like I never really thought that I would do anything like this. Even if you told me this 2 years ago, or even, in the beginning of 2020, I would have never even imagined, and I probably wouldn't believed if anyone had told me I would have done any of this stuff. So yeah, it's been amazing. And, I'm just so happy and just so grateful for the positive response that I've gotten, just all around, not just in the agriculture community, but in environmental organizations, all over the country.
So that's a lot.
Yeah,
That's a handful. Can you
I
hear me okay?
know, I know.
You can hear me okay, right?
Hmm.
Okay, cool. So what I got from that is you're a total rock star, you're a trendsetter. What was that? You say trailblazer?
Uh,
Uh, all of that. That's cool and crazy all at the same time.
yeah.
So that's mind blowing. So how has this put you in uncomfortable situations, and not in a negative way, but made you push forward and do things that you thought you never would have do or accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, it really just it started with that first decision of really feeling uncomfortable about like where my career was going, and like what I was actually seeing in my own like kind of journey of oyster farming. And it was in that decision of which at the time I did not think that it was going to be as big as it's been now. But I made the first step, and they always say that the first step is the hardest. So now it's kind of felt like they're not uncomfortable situations. It's more of like I have a vision now in mind. So it's like, let's step towards the vision. Like, let's keep stepping towards the goal here. Like, what can we do on this level, and what can we do on this level? And 2020 was such a powerful year for me, and not just in the sense of making this big step, but in the sense of like really trying to figure out like what was really important to me, not just by being an oyster farmer. It was, I realized that it was a lot more than that, and that I loved what I was doing because I had my own type of legacy that was engraved in it. And now learning all of like my family history and all the generations, and kind of how being a waterman is really in my blood. It just makes the steps more count more. So I don't really think of it as like uncomfortable situations, but as powerful opportunities to be able to continue the conversation, and to be able to make sure that diversity and inclusion have a like a longer impact than just like right now, as like being a cool thing that people kind of want to do and strive for and all that stuff.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about your upbringing and how working on the water has been in your family?
Yeah. Well, I grew up on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, Chestertown, specifically. And I've, ever since I was 7 years old, like I've wanted to be in working in the environment. I didn't actually know what I wanted to do, but from a very young age, I was exposed to like environmental camps and space camps. And, my dad's really into fishing. So, we would go fishing a lot as a family. And I was just around the water all the time. And, that's a great thing about living in a coastal community, is that it's kind of engraved in us when you're around here to kind of be on the water, to love the water in some type of capacity, whether it's in eating or in recreation or commercial. So it's kind of like second nature. And it wasn't until later that, I realized that my mom actually realized with our genealogy that we have a legacy of watermen dating back all the way to the 1800s in these exact spots that we were growing up. And so learning about that was great. It skipped a few generations. I have for a very long time when I was growing up, I was in lack of better words, like a black sheep, because, my family was nurses and doctors, and my mom, is a very accomplished parole and probation officer of 25 years. And my dad is a psychiatric nurse. And so they are engraved into their own professions, and they do well in them. And so when I kind of came out and was like, I want to do environmental work, they were like, you want to do what? And I just was like, yeah. And I did this camp at Horn Point, in Cambridge, Maryland, when I was in 2003. And that camp was like kind of my first real introduction into like Chesapeake Bay restoration. We learned about oysters and blue crabs and striped bass and submerged aquatic vegetation. And my mom likes to joke now that like when she dropped me off, I was like really timid and scared to go. And then when she picked me up, I could not stop talking about, well, we need to like recycle, and this is what we need to do. Like, Mom, we need to go to the store, and when we're washing our cars, we don't wash them like in the driveway, wash them in the grass, so the nutrients and the toxics get absorbed in the soil, that don't go into our waters. And I just was so fascinated by it. And and then once I really started to learn about my own family connection, I was like, oh, okay, so like maybe like I'm just bringing the family back full circle. Like at this point, I'm not kind of on this array journey. And even if I was, my family supported me anyway. But it just makes it even more special that I'm doing something that my ancestors were really successful at as well.
Right. So you really said a mouthful there, especially with the going to the camps and learning early. I think that has a huge impact on young people and people in general, but just learning early about the environment, the ecosystem. So just how do you think we can reach younger kids? Because I think that could have a bigger impact, a larger impact on their life.
Yeah, that's been one of my biggest things with minorities and aquaculture, is really trying to, I don't think that it's ever going to be like too early. Like we really have to start educating kids, like you said, at a very young age, about one, how does your environment affect you? And then how are you affecting your environment? And it's just like as simple things as like, when you turn on your water, like where does that come from? And where you turn on your shower, like where does that water come from? Because then once we start, doing and educating about everyday life effects of the environment, then we can start really setting the spark of, okay, well, if my environment is affected, or if I'm affected by this pollution or whatever, then how about like the animals and the other marine organisms that are affected by this pollution? And so you just really, I think one of my biggest things for me that I've learned is that we have to really start meeting people where they are with their environmental education. People have a lot of great programs that kind of jumps a few steps, and yeah, like it's really cool, but especially like, inner city kids, they don't see the water every day. They don't really make the connection of the environment every day. So if we started early of really like helping them understand like what's going on around them, then they're going to start being invested in what's going on in other parts that they don't see every day, and then wanting to learn about them, and hopefully like sparking that so that they can also make effective changes as well.
Bravo. I've had some wise people on here, but I tell you, can I ask how old you are, Imani?
I'm 26.
Come on now. 26, what was I doing? Man.
I know a lot of people my age like would get really upset about that, but I take it with so much gratitude, because it is, I've done a lot of like work on myself to do this. Like, I haven't been the most confident or like the most like anything, being a person of color in mostly non-person of color fields, or white fields, it's been hard. So I've had to try to work through those things. So anytime someone's like, how old are you, or like, where did you learn any of this stuff, I'm like, thank you so much for noticing, because it's not easy. So
can you just talk a little bit about that feeling? not a lot of people can connect with that. And of course I can because I'm right here with you, and
Yeah.
just being in those rooms where you're the only person that, you know, a person of
Yeah.
color. So can you just
Hmm.
talk a little bit about that feeling and how it makes you feel and what can we do to change it?
Yeah. I mean, so it's I feel like my journey has been a little bit, different. I've had to really navigate it in a different way because I grew up in, a predominantly white community. I played lacrosse like all throughout my whole life and field hockey. And then I played lacrosse in college. So a lot of my spaces have been predominantly white. So I was kind of like in my journey, I had the mindset of like, well, I'm not thinking about race. Like I never wanted to be like a person's like black friend or black girlfriend or black coworker. I just wanted to be a friend, great person. I just wanted to be upfront who I was. And it's been hard to really separate those two things because, first time when I walk into a room, people only see my skin color. Whether my personality is good or not, they will always, some people will always prejudge me for my skin color. And I've had to like be okay with that and be like, well, that's on them, that's not on me. Because when I walk into a room, I don't see skin color. I'm trying to find out your true colors. Um, but it's
Whoa.
been
Hold up, Imani. Oh, you can just drop no bar like that. Just keep going. Whoa. Okay. All right. You want to see the true color. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, but it's true. It's like I've always just really wanted, I'm such a people's person. Like I love connecting with people. And so automatically, yeah, like everybody knows this color. Like it's really, I feel like it's like really irresponsible to say like I don't see color. But because it helps you with your experience, but and understanding other people's experiences. But with mine, it was like I kind of was conditioned a little bit just based off the environments that I was in to kind of sit in this like token black girl space. And once and I didn't really realize it at the time, but it was affecting me a lot more than I actually like put on or actually like was, admitting to myself. Because like I said, like I'm black first, but I'm also a human most importantly. And yeah, it's just been I've really had to work through like, okay, well, like who am I as a black person? I've been, the whole like, oh, well, you act white or you don't talk black or whatever, that all of that has been said to me. And I've really had to be like, well, find out what your own definition of being black is. There is no textbook definition about what being a black is. So it's your definition, it's how you show up. And once I figured that out, it was like game over. I can be anybody who I want to be. I'm acting the way that I want to act. I'm showing up the way that I want to show up because that is authentically me. And that's all I can be. I can't be anybody else, whether I've been influenced by white, predominantly white spaces or not. I can't change that. And so it's been really powerful though to connect with other like African American women outside of my family because I've really realized that we all are kind of battling that definition of what being black is.
So this has nothing to do with oysters, but I guess it kind of has something to do with, minorities of aquaculture.
Mm-hmm.
But any tips that you could give, somebody of color or the minority, just how to, I'm not going to say find yourself, but just be their self.
Right. Well, to be yourself, you have to know yourself. That's point blank. I say I'm such a big, advocate for when you know and really know. I don't mean like know like what your favorite colors are or whatever like that. But I mean like when you truly sit down with yourself, and this was something I had to do in 2020 that was so powerful for me. I really had to sit down with myself and be like, is this the life that you want? And one, like, how did you get here in this moment today? Pros and cons. How have you been showing up in a really good way? And how have you been showing up in really irresponsible or like not true ways? And some of them were really hard. Like I had to really break up with the mindset and kind of like the core belief of some of those things that had been told to me all, my whole life. But once I did that, I felt so, I mean, I know that I sound, you say I sound pretty profound for 26, but at 25 years old, or I'm at 26th birthday, actually, this past September, sadly, but also great, thankfully, that was the first time that I ever felt like Imani Black. Point blank. Like I felt so true in myself because I took the time to really like say like, okay, here's where your weaknesses are. Here's what you're good at. Here's where you really need to like study up more. And once I did that, nobody can tell me anything about myself that I don't already know. So my biggest advice to, young people of color is get to know yourself, because if somebody says, oh, well, like, you're lazy, or you're this, you're that, be like, I already know. You can't tell me. And I mean, self-talk.
That's all you got? That's
yeah,
it?
like at this point, it's like, that's really like, one of my biggest things is like, people, one of my examples is like when people say like, oh, Imani, you're so dramatic. Yeah, you're right. And I'm about to be dramatic for the next 5 minutes. So just hold on tight. I already know this process. So like, I can't, I'm really trying to work on it. Thank you so much for bringing it my attention. But I know, they say that self-talk can be either, the most positive thing that you can say to yourself or the most negative things. And when I look at it, I'm like, I've said some really hurtful and nasty things to myself. Am I really going to give somebody else that power to dismantle everything that I've just built up based off of like what I already know, just because it's coming out of somebody else's mouth? Like, no, it's like kind of like an armor of like, nobody can tell me anything that I already know about myself at this point.
Preach. Wow. I usually leave the deep stuff for the end of the podcast, but I think we done hit all of it.
I've been waiting for this conversation, Gardner. That. I've been like waiting for us to have this deep conversation from the get-go.
I know, and it's crazy because like, I just want to say, first of all, sometimes I feel like I need like multiple podcasts because I want to have so many conversations with so many different people and just bigger than oysters, and you know what? I'm going to put this out to the listeners. If you want to hear not just oyster stuff, but just life stuff, send me an email, oysterninjapc@gmail.com. I mean, like, because I got so many questions for people, and usually I wait till like we get offline and I'll just ask questions and, about life, because it's not just about oysters, but I don't want to bore people either because I'm just real inquisitive.
Right.
But yeah, all right, let's get back to this podcast. I'm done. This might how you make a podcast. I don't know.
It's okay. Everyone keeps saying that, like, Imani, you should have a podcast. You should have a podcast. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be really cool because I just like to talk to people all day. But like, with what time at this point? So if you do it, I'm gonna listen to it because that's what I've also been like searching for too.
I hope you just saw that light bulb go off. We got some. We can't say it out loud though. I'll talk to you offline.
Okay.
Okay. Oh yeah, minorities of aquaculture. Okay. So let's just talk about your oyster. Just not growing up, but working on an oyster farm. How was that for you?
It was great. My first introduction in aquaculture was in the OAT program at Virginia Institute of Marine Science in 2016. So yeah, that was like a 6-month boot camp of just learning everything about hatchery, nursery, and farm, and that, and even lab work. And that was my first like introduction of just like really understanding like what aquaculture was. From there, I went on to an oyster farm in Gloucester, Virginia, where I was like working mostly on the farm, but a little bit in the hatchery. And that was that was my first experience with like working with 15 guys and being the only woman. That was its own experience, but I think that experience was necessary because that would really set me up for kind of the rest of my career of being in a male dominated field. But yeah, and so then in 2017, at like, you know, middle of 2017, I moved back home to Maryland and took a little bit of break from aquaculture, and started working for like the state of Maryland doing environmental specialist work. And then after that, I was just like, I loved, you know, that job and everyone was great there, but I was just like, this is not what I want to do. Like, I kind of, you know, sadly so, like when my first day there, in my head, I was like, I probably won't be here longer than a year. Because I kind of knew like, this really isn't what I want to do. Even though it was really fun, I learned a lot of things, but thankfully after that, you know, I got back into aquaculture working for Hooper's Island Oyster Company, which is the first privately owned hatchery in Cambridge, Maryland. And I worked there for the past like 2.5 years, just being, you know, lead hatchery technician at first, and then assistant hatchery manager for the last 1.5 years. So yeah, it's been great. Like, I've learned a lot, but there's so much to learn in aquaculture. It's like, you can never really feel like, you know, you really got it like all together. And, you know, I never claimed to know a lot about aquaculture, but the really good thing about how I'm really trying to set up minorities in aquaculture is that I'm learning with other people too. So actually, like a couple months ago, I went up to Hudson, New York to work on a land-based fish farm because I had never worked in fish aquaculture. So I was working with steelhead trout, and that was the first time I had done anything other than oysters. And the great thing about aquaculture is that there's so many different aspects that you can kind of jump in and see what you like, but most importantly, you can see what you don't like. Aquaculture is a very, you know, just like being in oysters in general is a very like labor intensive, long days, early mornings type of gig. If you don't love it, it's going to be miserable. So it's really important to like figure out what you love to do and what you don't love to do. So it's really kind of been my journey so far in like this new stage of my career.
So far as like resources and people who want to, I guess, follow your footsteps, like how does Minorities of Aquaculture help other minorities coming into the business?
Yeah, so you know, for a little bit there, I was really struggling with like, who do I like directly target, you know? And I just like kind of like I said, I was really staying true to myself. Well, like I'm a Black woman, so okay. And you know, that fact of which is I don't know if you've like heard, but there's this fact going around that's been thrown at me a few times here that like I'm the only African-American woman from Maryland to Texas to be participating in aquaculture, which I don't know if I totally believe, but a lot of people seem to believe that. And so I don't take it lightly. And so it's been my mission to really understand what are the barriers of a minority getting into aquaculture, because I understand that my experience has been really privileged. I know a lot of people don't have access to boats or, you know, whatever. Even as a minority, you can still be privileged over other minorities and their access to the waterways.
Right.
So it's really, for me, it's been really understanding what are the true barriers, but also like, I don't want to dictate anybody else's career. You know, like it's not a one size fits all, you know, me being a perfect example of that. I kind of got into aquaculture like really unconventionally, but I just want to be a door of opportunities. I want to be a support system. I want to empower women and just say like, hey, like, you know, this is a career. I don't know if you knew that this is a viable career. And I know that everyone's not going to want to be an oyster farmer. So like, let's find something that truly fits for you. And like, you come to me, or like, we talk about like what your passions are, what your goals are for your life. And like, let's try to figure out a game plan. And while we're figuring out that game plan, I'm providing, you know, the resources, paid internships, mentorships, and not just with myself, but with other partners and connections that I've created through Minorities in Aquaculture. Because like I said, I don't know everything. So if I have a girl who's like, I want to get into kelp farming. I've met some really great kelp farmers. I didn't even know kelp farming was like a big thing, but it is. And I'm learning that, you can do recipes with it and all this other stuff. So if I have a girl that's like, I want to do kelp farming, I'm like, call up my connection, say, hey, I've got this girl. What can we do? Can we figure out something? And like, just send her on her way, send her out to get those experiences. So that's just really how I've been trying to help, one, finding minorities. And, people think that there's these like secret minorities that are like in aquaculture that they just, aren't online or something like that. And people have come to me with like job announcements and like, hey, like, can you send this out to your girls? And I'm like, what girls? I'm like, not trying to be rude, but I'm like, what girls are you talking about? Because as I've heard recently, I'm the only one. So I'm trying to create even a list of where are these minority women at? And now it's been really great because a lot of Black women are really stepping out and saying like, no, we are in marine science. But yeah, getting them in aquaculture is my biggest thing. So, I just want to give them that exposure overall.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So jeez, what can we do? Like, what do you think? What do you got going on? What's next for you?
Oh, yeah, there's a ton of things going on. I have such a active, and not even gonna be shy, but I have an active ADD brain. So I've got like millions of ideas flooding through my head on not just minorities and aquaculture, but all these like really cool things that I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to mainstream my focus right now because like I said, my active brain would have me going in like 15 different directions. So I'm trying to put those on the other things on a dream board and just focus on school and minorities and aquaculture. And right now, like, I'm just looking for partners to facilitate internships. I'm looking for women, Black women that want to get into, that just like kind of want to explore aquaculture, just even want to have a conversation about it. I've been so grateful for people's like donations. I really want, one of the barriers of minorities getting into marine sciences is the lack of finances. So I kind of want, if I can, it's going to be my goal, and it is my goal continuously, to eliminate some of those barriers. So like, okay, cool, you need a pair of boots, I got you. You need some oilskins, I got you. Like, you need transportation to get to that internship, I got you. Hotel, no problem. Like, I want to be able to just eliminate some of those barriers so that people can just have experiences and then just like go, take that experience and like I said, just create their own success for their own career.
Beautiful. So when you're dead and gone, R.I.P. Imani was a great one. What do you want people to think? What's your legacy? What do you want to leave behind?
Oh, I think, I think one of the things that I want to leave behind definitely is just like, I want people to kind of say like, she was really compassionate. Like, she was like really, trying to genuinely and authentically help people. And, and in that, she was really understanding and really wanted to understand, not just like people on a surface level, but like people on a really like intimate, personal life journey level. That she really, really promoted and really advocated for genuine human connection, because she felt like that was going to push us forward and really bridging the gap between, or what people think about bridging the gap between minorities and marine sciences or predominantly white fields and other things like that. So yeah, I think that would probably be the biggest thing, is that I was just like really compassionate.
Easy enough. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, that question's hard because I don't really have time to think about. I try not to, with all these like great things happening, it's when I have an opportunity, and say it's like a bigger scale, as soon as I read the email, the name of like who's actually contacting me slips to the back, and I'm like, it's just an interview. because I know that if I'm like, oh, I'm doing this, or oh, this story's coming out and that's going to be really big, I'm gonna start getting like overwhelmed by like what the legacy is trying to look like, or like what I'm building. You know, I just want it to happen organically. So I haven't really thought about like what the legacy would be, also because I wasn't trying to be the first. I wasn't trying to be a trailblazer. It just kind of happened.
Right. Okay. So, first of all, do you have any more swag left?
Ooh, I got a little bit, but merch drop happening summer 2021. So hold on to your lats, ladies and gents, because I'm coming out hot with some new stuff.
Cool. All right.
I
So
gotta
just
keep up with you though, because
will
you be dropping some really cool swag. I'm like, all right, Gardner. I
Hey,
thought of that.
it don't count if it's not selling. Anyway,
Great.
so oh yeah, so how can the good people reach out to you, get in contact with you, follow what you're doing, and of course get your merch?
Yeah, well, all announcements happen on the Instagram, which is MIANPO. It's just Minorities and Aquaculture Nonprofit. That just so happens, MIANPO just so happens to be the website also, but it's MIANPO.org. And that, that you can find the donation button there. That's where you can also find my email. But yeah, just, you can send me an email on Instagram, or a message on Instagram, or Facebook, any of the social medias besides Twitter, because I honestly thought Twitter was going to die out, but it hasn't yet. So yeah, any other social media I'm on for Minorities in Agriculture.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Imani. I appreciate you gracing the Oyster Ninja Podcast. Just killing it, trailblazing all over the place. Appreciate
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. That's it. That's all. That's an episode.
Awesome. Woo! I've been on the Oyster Ninja Podcast. Yeah.